So we actually have another video we'll get to here in a couple minutes, and that's of Dr. Detroit when he was participating in our digital hash bash, which I think likely will turn out to be the hash bash of this year. Maybe things get going and something materializes, but I haven't seen any evidence of that yet, and it's kind of a difficult thing to do at the moment. So we might be looking at the Jubilee next year, next time around, for the gathering at the Diag, but we've been trying to highlight whenever we have guests on who have been on there, and Rick did a good job of going through and making these different segments of everybody's presentation. And during that time, there was a little bit of a glitch with the, I think it was with the video, but we got his statement out there, and it's really good. So we definitely want to play that and have that on hand to discuss, perhaps too, with the other list of stuff that he'd like to bring to the table.
Once again, one of our male guests for the digital hash bash had to have their audio rescued by the female partner of theirs.
So that was a common theme. Yep.
Happened several times.
And Debra made sure she pointed it out every time.
I pointed out several times. Every time it happened, I pointed it out. Everybody had a smart woman hanging over their neck trying to fix their audio and video feed.
Yep.
There you go.
So I don't know if we got that queued up, Derek, but if not, in the meantime, we can,
do it.
We can pump up the, there we go. Let's go right to this.
Yeah, I'm just gonna click it. All right, here.
Shut up and
Nice.
All right, very excited to have our next speaker. He is a professor at University of Detroit Mercy. In his professional capacity, he's also known around town as Dr. Detroit. He's one of the profound advocates in the state of Michigan, and he's a great organizer. And all the good things I've said about him are probably because of his fantastic wife as well, who helped get him hooked up here. But Gail Whitty. But please, for our Hash Bash community, we welcome Dr. Detroit, Michael Whitty.
Hey, the blues is all right. I love Thornetta. I'm a member of the Detroit Blues Society. That's why I call myself Dr. Detroit. That's what makes it a beautiful and holy city. So let's keep the blues alive. I'm delighted to be here today. I can assure you that I am very relaxed and enjoying the moment with all of you together. We're all in this marriage with sacred herb. It's the spirit of the plant that gives our great life the gifts that we enjoy as prophets, building our own legacy with cannabis in a future where we will say to each other, not just namaste, but canistay. I tell you, stay positive, hopeful, optimistic, and brave, and we'll pass through the virus, and we'll pass through the hostility to the beautiful, heart-opening medicine that gives us a peaceful heart, allows us to accept ourselves and love life. So my message today, as your Dr. Detroit, is let's accept the job we've taken on. Let's appreciate our lives, the nature spirit. Let's always give thanks and gratitude for the joys of our life that cannabis has brought us. Count the blessings of cannabis, to see the silver lining in everything, and absolutely give thanks. Find your voice to be a prophet in your own time. Finish your life legacy with trust, love, and happiness and an open heart, allowing the sacred herb to make you more sweet, holy, and loving. That's your natural self, folks, to be sweet, holy, and loving. And the next time I shake your hand, I want you to look me in the eye and say, the Holy Trinity is in us all. We are the futurists. We are the ones that will cure this world and this reality with cannabis, because that's part of nature's medicine. It relaxes us. It makes us more adaptable, more accepting, more open-hearted, more calm and kind, more emotional intelligence. It leads us psychologically to open us to an innate spirituality. which I'll call our insight, our inner guide, our intuition. It just makes us do better decisions. It acts as our guide. It allows us to connect with others like today. It connects us with healing, hope, happiness. Like John Sinclair says, it's all good. And I say, John, it ain't fair, John Sinclair, but we're going to make a fair future in a fair world with cannabis consciousness. And that's what it really is. The original dream was that it alters us to a higher consciousness so we can live more selflessly, more kindly, more lovingly, more in service, more understanding that we're all one, we're all family.
Hey, awesome. Well, I'll say, this was this was dedicated, the Digital Hash Bash, to John Sinclair, and he was in the waiting room. He didn't get on and do a presentation. He was recovering from pretty major surgery, but he was there with us and listening. And I did ask him if he wanted to come on for a minute, and what he told me was, no, I just completely agree with Dr. Whitty. So he just said, that's what I want to say, is what he just said.
I will say that on the Digital Hash Bash, this was the presentation where the word love and happiness and positivity was the most evident. Your speech was very impressive and very motivational, Mike. Thank you.
Yep. And so we'll turn it over to you in a minute. Dr. Detroit, I just want to say that you are a professor, academician. You've labor relations at University of Detroit, classes at University of Michigan, University of San Francisco, even at Oaksterdam, of course. And you've brought some of us into your class to discuss some of these drug war related issues and that type of thing. And just been doing this reform efforts in many regards for many years and been really successful with it. And glad you're still around. And I know you have some important stuff to offer to us now. And I'd like to turn it over to you to start this conversation.
Very much, Jamie and Rick and Debra. I'm with you. I'm with you 100% there on that gut instinct about cops. I have a cop brother and a cop sister-in-law, Detroit cops, retired. And they taught me about alley court. They taught me about test-a-line. They taught me a lot of things. And I don't like driving up from the safety of 7 Mile and Woodward into Oakland County, where I have to cross and face 5 police departments and the sheriff and the prosecutor. So it ain't fair, but that's how it has been most of my life. That's why I joined and helped found the Michigan Cannabis Caucus, and I encourage my friends like Craig Schmidt up in Saginaw to create a GOP version of it so honest Republicans convert their own party. Everybody work with their comfort zone and where they live, but we have a big election coming, an important primary in Oakland County. A progressive judge stepped down to challenge the incumbent prosecutor, Jessica Cooper. It looks like she can be taken out of office on this round, as the the progressives are engaged as a focus in the primary around the Oakland County prosecutor's race. I'm involved with helping Rashida Tlaib in her primary race in August also. So listeners should check on who's running in either party's primary and try to get the most open-minded person elected in the primary. Then, stay connected up through the coming election cycle with the Cannabis Caucus. Is going to be revitalized on a district level. So all of the hosts of this show could represent their congressional district. That's how the Democratic Party's caucus system is set up. And we have also, some news about Senator Peters being a co-sponsor of the banking bill, the cannabis banking bill that's in the Senate. And an interesting piece of mail sent out by Safer Mish today on former Attorney General Holder in a position to influence Biden to cough up legalization before November so we can be better bridge builders and lesser of two evil voting for the hardcore audience that may be tuned in to this podcast. But all of that and local races to take back the Michigan House so we have some better leverage to push expungement quicker. At least in one chamber, we have, had Isaac Robinson there. I grew up with Isaac, and I know his father as well. And I feel sorrowful for his loss in our legislature. We have Jeff Irwin in the Senate doing a lot of good. We should be making the most of Black Lives Matter. No question, there's a crossover. I always gave the Prop 1 message as end the racist drug war. And I used the book by Michelle Alexander, Jim Crow, in my drug policy class at U of M Dearborn. So there's a natural overlay. We could broaden our coalitions. We could do more cross networking. We could make elections more fun and more exciting. We could even knock off the sheriff in November if we had a big blue wave. That's why I say, don't just get an absentee ballot, but tell people, make it emphatic, let's vote straight Democratic, so we teach the Republican Party a lesson. And we break up their alliance of bankers and bigots that have captured the party, a religious party of national Christians or nationalist Christians. It's really a horrible world trend, and we are part of it. We're just one step ahead of the Philippines. So I'm pretty energized by this whole process. Only thing I'd add is that I just spent an hour with the new chair of the Michigan Democratic Party's Cannabis Caucus. That's certainly a vehicle for us to get a better seat at the table, to get the governor to initiate an expungement pardon. Have the governor initiate an expungement pardon seems really good. And I obviously would love to come back in future cycles through the election. Just because everything breaks fast every day, there's great chance that we can get further by the fact that we have friends in every movement. We have people who medicate for different reasons in every walk of life, in every age group, in every race, and every movement. So we could become a leading force and a healing force. And I really think, Rick and Jamie, you've got your finger on the pulse. I'm very impressed. And Debra, it's terrific. We are really a progressive bunch. And I think the cannabis is somehow part of what brought us all together.
Typically not Colin or Jim. Just want to point.
I was going to say Colin for sure not. He's still a pup. He's still in training.
And Jim is so cool. Look at his background.
Jim,
look at his whole.
Is his hair blowing?
Wow, that's Fonzie. That's Fonzie goes to camp right there, man. But Michael Whitty, we've got an issue right now with a gentleman named Michael Thompson, who's been incarcerated for a very long time under a very old rule, and it seems like we're having no luck shaking the tree and getting him to fall out of the system. What's the best way for Michael Thompson advocates to go about forcing the governor to release him from the system?
There's a large prison reform coalition called Liberation. They've been out challenging Jessica Cooper with black women who've had trouble with the sheriff, the lawsuits, jailings, shootings. And they're doing bail, they're doing the people that are integrated back into the community, moms with kids in prison and women in prison. They're doing a number of ancillary reform projects with a statewide focus on Lansing. Maybe that's a doorway for us to get our message. Here is a case where you can enlarge the coalition that they're claiming to represent, but we don't have a seat at the table, and vice versa. It broadens our scope. But what I've heard today from almost every single person in this chat, you already are very broad and encompassing thinkers, and I'm honored to be among you. And Colin, this is the best college class you'll ever have. This is a super group of gurus here for you.
I'm their guru. What are you
talking about? He was going to say, no, you are not. You told us right at Taco Tuesday. I am not your guru.
Very old inside joke about Colin being the guru. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And he is. He's the guru.
It all works out pretty well.
We're all each other's guru is like what really needs to be.
That's true.
Okay.
It's like a group guru action. Which,
it's guru, man.
I think
Rick makes that sound kind of gross and undesirable for some.
Yes, he does. Oh, everything. Yeah, just a little moist.
So, Mike, you just did a Zoom meeting. You might have heard on the news program that I kind of plugged you for it. Can you tell us a little bit about what you just did, what it accomplished, and who you had participating?
Well, the group was the Humanist Committee of the Unitarian Church. They were older people. So I started with the appeal to my generation. We grew up with Archie Bunker as comedy. And most of half of my generation are still Archie Bunker mindset. pro-Trump people. So we were looking at maybe the pandemic could be a fulcrum to show that Trump betrayed them and risked their lives and put them into a high risk 6 months to come or a year to come, where they have to keep dodging the bullet every time they choose to go outside, go anywhere, have anyone over or in, let alone let someone pass a joint to them and put their lips upon a joint. That's also considered a transmissible possibility due to saliva. So that's changed the habits of my lifetime. And I even caught myself forgetting that in one case and instinctively clutching a joint that was passed toward me. So I realized, whoa, I'm taking my life in my hands. I might as well be riding a motorcycle on I-75. So I'm
muscle memory, though, Mike. Someone sticks a joint out to you, you just automatically, it's hard to break that habit. I give it to you.
I confess, Father. Forgive me for my sins.
Yeah. Well, so what's your plan for 2020? Are you still going to look forward to having classes later this year? I know as an educator, everything's sort of up in the air right now, isn't it?
Yes, it's still not yet clear whether the college will reopen and take a risk. They could have a lot of sick kids in the dorm, or they might stay heavily digital. It looks like many of the colleges are going to try to reopen. Still a little bit up in the air. But I've been honored to have various guests from the cannabis movement over the years, and Adam Brooke among them, have been in that class. It's a good experience for the Muslim American students. For many of them, it's something they've never encountered or thought about. Colin, you were in that panel.
With Q?
About that class at U of M Dearborn you came to.
Yeah.
With Zara.
Zara and Q?
Yeah, and Q.
Right?
Yeah.
There was somebody else too.
A woman who was a grower or had some products and was in the industry.
Yeah.
River,
I can't think of her name. But yeah, it was really cool. It was really fun class. I got to talk about decriminalized nature in it, and all the kids' eyes went big and wide, and I talked to them about what I had done in the past, and I don't know, I thought that they were really listening to me when I spoke, and also when Zara and Quinette spoke, and I'd say there was a lot of the class was I'd say half Muslim at least. Ethnicity at the U of M Dearborn. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Pretty open-minded young people who are abstinent and don't engage in the medicine. And then they reminded me when I tried to compare it to alcohol, they reminded me that Islam forbids the consumption of alcohol. So they were not engaged in things that I assume college students might engage in, like beer drinking.
That's a knowledge gap you just wouldn't normally.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I didn't bring it in the door. I learned it from the students. Yeah.
Well, I spoke to your class. Greg Pawlowski and I came at one point. I'm not sure if Jamie's spoken to your class at U of M Dearborn before.
Once at University of Detroit and once at University or Michigan Dearborn.
Yep. So it's a great experience to be able to bring the little bit of time that we have to be able to cram as much knowledge as we can for the students. But what a great opportunity they have. Typically, we don't think of classes like what you're offering as being available in higher education. And I think it's a wonderful attribute. We see Professor Gus Rosani at the University of Michigan offering specific classes for cannabis, things like Northern Michigan University. And I think Lake Superior State or Lake Tech now have cannabis classes here in Michigan also too. It's quite revolutionary. The halls of education used to freeze out any details about cannabis. Professors were forbidden from even mentioning it. Mike, is that true?
Well, I was careful how I raised it. In the early days in the labor classes, I used to do a module on employee drug testing. So I interject the civil liberties and the union contract and the steward and some labor law. So I did bring the subject up. I managed to find a way through the course title to attach the use of cannabis, like employee drug testing for truckers and drivers and folks like that. under federal law, mandated. Yes, we can raise it, but it puts you in stereotype too. I will say one change that impressed me when I was at U of M Dearborn. Down the hall, the business school had a Green Wolverine business student cannabis club. And I thought, wow, well, okay, the business schools have a cannabis club. There's a whole new class of young business people. Of course, you guys have covered the younger generation of entrepreneurs who have mixed in with the old timers, but there's a good group of interesting people, not all of whom are our cup of tea 100%, but they're our cousins, aren't they? They're part of the family.
Well, the Green Wolverine's been a great series. I've spoken at their events a couple times by invitation. But you are right. That really is a melding of some of us from the activist community versus some people who actually are hardcore business professionals who really may not share a lot of other interests in common with us. Jamie, you were going to say something a second ago.
One of those guys from the Green Wolverine is now, I believe, running a kind of a successful hemp operation.
Enrique, I mean, there's just lots of great guys down there. I suppose the important thing is when you look at a university like the University of Michigan, it has to be a leader. I learned just last year an interesting statistic. When all aspects of the university are considered, the University of Michigan is the largest single employer in the state of Michigan. Now that includes U of M Hospital, U of M Michigan, Dearborn, the Flint campus, all the other campuses that they have. When you look at that aggregated, that's an incredible amount of power. And for that university to be advancing cannabis in some ways, and not necessarily so much in the other. And there's a study that just came out from the University of Michigan, which is done in partnership with the Michigan drug enforcement people, which is, it's kind of stilted, and I'm a little upset about it. But you know, the university's taken a pretty good stance on most things here.
It reminds me of an analogy that was commonly raised in the Bay Area. Dennis Perone being one of the leaders, who, along with Dale Geringer and a host of other people in the early medical marijuana 215, was sort of a recognition that we're normalizing marijuana by coming out and being responsible users, and we're shaping it around good cultural values and optimism and positive and virtuous intention. So it's sort of analogous to the fact that the culture in our lifetime has eased up on being frightened of gay people or frightened of homosexuality. We're a little more relaxed, and we've got it in the proper context. It's more comfortable for most of us. So that's an evolution we've seen occur around something that was taboo and stigmatized. And so too, cannabis still has a stigma associated with it. It still has a lot of judgment, and we're lesser people for using it. If we just drank vodka, we'd be normal. And that would be fine. But we deal with this mysterious weed. It might be the devil's weed that we use, you know. God knows, it could be immoral.
Well, we always see the people have advancements in philosophy and social acceptance, and that leads lawmaking. Lawmaking oftentimes takes a while to catch up. That's why sometimes we're outraged when we see laws on the books that date back to the 50s or the 40s or the 30s for things that are just absolutely forbidden in our current society. So what do we need to do in order for cannabis to push forward and get some of those old rules taken off the books? For example, the Schedule I status in Michigan of cannabis. This is one of Jamie's favorite topics to talk about because it's such a huge contradiction. It makes people distrust government just because they embrace it.
You know, that's true. And I would hope that one of Biden has said one of the things he would consider is descheduling it, I believe. So possibly we can achieve that sooner at the federal level, and the states can fall in line, or we can ask more of our governor and attorney general and elected officials, and elect a few more of our own people, like Al Williams for that House seat down in Detroit that he has a primary fight. And so keep your eye on the primaries and get yourself a ballot, take a look who's running for what, and know that you can have more influence in a primary than any other typical general election. You could work in a Republican Party. If there's some listener who's died in the will Republican, and we know we have lots of pot-smoking Republican friends, so some of our best pot-smoking friends are Republicans, but I wouldn't want my daughter to marry one. No, I'm just but So,
We were all thinking it, but you just said it. No, I'm just kidding. Jamie.
So we had Al on last week, and just to let you know, and of course, in a couple minutes here, we're going to be speaking with Nikki. And if you're welcome to stay on too for that, Mike, by the way, for that discussion, and that might be of some interest for you. So please do if that's the case. But before we kind of move on to that, and you let us know what we can, how we can help out, whatever your the things that you think are important right now. How substantial or how serious it is, and to what degree do you think Biden will discuss the descheduling? Will he say, I'm going to order, the DEA to take this off Schedule 1, day one, like Bernie was saying? Or what's kind of the plan most likely from, when that goes down?
So I think I would go and ask the Drug Policy Alliance people or the MPP or half dozen groups that are working right in Washington, and maybe a key congressperson. I could go through Andy Levin for some help, but some of the co-chairs of the National House Cannabis Caucus, they would have a better sense of how we can get the most from our time and effort. And I wish we had a better grip on that at the level most of us are operating, but I think that's the key piece. Could somebody else help? Going through the Bernie people, they're in the mix. A couple of the key Bernie people on Biden's committees might be a doorway to sharpen and raise issues that would be important to us, like a clear-cut position on descheduling would take a lot of voters off the fence who might have no love for the Democrats and be inclined to kind of disturb things with Trump and vote for him. So maybe a clear signal from the Democratic Party would help their youth turnout, would help a single issue voter, the Republican on the fence, a contrarian Archie Bunker voter might tip for us if Biden was better and more visible. He made the cannabis issues that he's already come around pretty good on, considering where his starting point was, pretty bad. But they should see this as more value and not be arrogant and insulated. That killed Hillary's one slight chance of making it. Insulation and arrogance. You got those big top campaigns are too isolated from people like us. We don't have our message to them, or we don't have a seat anywhere near the table. Well, I'm not telling you anything you don't know.
So anything, and I appreciate that. Anything to leave us with as we transition into our next discussion?
Just quickly, do as much, big tent, mega coalition building, look for new allies, reach out, make a little effort to these prison reform people and criminal justice reform people, because it lets us in the door on a lot of fronts and a lot of levels. And we're mixed in with allies who will buy our expungement priorities and buy a good portion of what we're up to. I'm glad to be on. Thanks for inviting me. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you, Dr. Detroit.
Yeah, welcome to stick around.
Yep, and thanks not just for today's performance, but for everything you've done for a long time.
Thanks, Michael.
We have a reggae band performing at Dr. Bob's at 8 o'clock this Friday for the summer solstice outdoors, with plenty of room for distancing. And, look for me there.